This is a Lynden Pioneer Museum in Lynden, Washington. A great deal of my son's collections are in this building, and we'll be taking a look at the museum and we'll highlight some of Matthew's collection. There's something like 54 different types of wagons, carriages, and transport vehicles horse-drawn. One of the most complete collections in the United States of horse-drawn vehicles. This museum is a world-class museum, not to be overlooked when you travel between San Francisco and Vancouver, BC. 17 miles off I-5, 5 miles from the Canadian line in the United States. Single horse buggy, very typical of the 1900s. Looking down the long aisleway with wagons on both sides. Here we have a horse-drawn sleigh. A two-seater or four-person wagon carriage. U.S. mail. These are called single trees and double trees. Single tree for a single horse, double tree for two horses. And of course, you could have two more trees on a tongue ahead for 4 or 6 horses. Of course, here we have a lady's side saddle. This is the general store, and Matthew's crockery, Red Wing Crocs are in the front window and on the back shelf. I think Matthew's largest crock was 35-gallon. The number on the front designates the gallons. Some came with handles, some came without. Most came with lids, and lids are the hardest part to find in the Red Wing collections because they're easily broken. This was Matthew's scale. He had a scale collection to an extent. More of his jugs. It had taken Matthew years to collect all this stuff, so I didn't want to break it up and sell it. This is a coffee urn or coffee pot, a Bunsen burner or alcohol burner on the bottom, and Gene and I found this coffee maker and a tray at a flea market in Eugene, Oregon. Typical general store, absolutely like the old days. Here's a cash register of the general store, and the unique part, you come in and you had a tab in the general store, and this is where your bills were kept. You came in at the end of the month and settled up with the storekeeper or whatever, and this is how they kept track of what you owed them. This is a little cafe, simulated cafe in the museum, and very typically out of the 30s and 40s. The menu board with the prices indicates that it's from the 40s. More laptop coffee grinders. This scale came out of Matthew's collections, and it was his mother's egg scale. In the old days, they used to weigh eggs for size. There were 2 of these donated. They sat on this counter for a long time together. I don't know where the second one went. Maybe somebody stole it. It was a dark, like a very dark blue or black. Typical farm or ranch gathering of hand tools for working the garden and raising crops, and just general duties around the farm. Milk cans. Typically farmers would have multiple cows, and they'd milk in the morning and put the milk in these cans and put them out along the railroad track or along the road, and they'd be gathered up in the morning and taken into the dairy. Very typical. The old term for a slow-moving train was a milk train, because they stopped at all the stops and picked up milk cans and dropped off clean ones for the next day's use. This is a butter churn of the day. You turn that crank and churn butter. Monday is supposed to be wash day. You had to heat the water on the stove and then do your laundry. And it was pretty much an all-day chore for a family. This is a typical kitchen. An old crank wall phone. Above they have a mural painted all the way around the building, plus baby buggies. Just a well laid out museum. This, of course, is the front room, living room. This is his Edison phonograph with a oak horn, well over 100 years old. This, of course, is the logging industry display with a high climber up a tree, cross-cut saws, falling saws, various types of hooks, a brush axe, a picaroon. This is what's called timber tongs, great deal like ice tongs, rope blocks, a year ago they had a split shaker here. He had a throw and a hammer, wooden hammer. Here we have a steam whistle. It looks very large for a steam donkey, so I'm not sure what it came off of. Here we have a very famous picture of a log turned into a camper. A little rocking horse and a cradle. A single bed. Might be a child's room, probably. Next door is the parents' room. And again, looking up at the ceiling and the border around the ceiling, you see displays of early Americana. This is more of Matthew's coffee mills and coffee grinder collection. This is a larger stuff. It's in the basement. This is a cutaway Gravely motor. This is on a special order from the vendor, the sales representative, to the Gravely factory. Very rare. This one came out of Cord's Auto Electric. Gravely is still built today, and it's a very, very solid, top-of-the-line garden implement, cultivators, planters, stuff like that, lawnmowers. Matthew had a large collection of those also. This is his sign, but it's not his Gravely cultivator. Now we're on the other side of the basement downstairs, and there's more of the buggies and carriages, plus some antique automobiles, lots of farm implements, bobsleds, early wagons, and it looks like maybe a handmade or homemade tricycle. Just a very, very interesting place. Here we have a hand speeder or a hand deal for the railroad. And it looks like a hobbyist water wheel, along with a sled. Fire department hose reel. It looks like some type of fire department water tank or pressure tank. I've not seen one of these. Here we have an early Lynden first rural fire truck. This is really early stuff. Another view of the downstairs with more wagons and murals on the wall. Time to time they will have a large collection of antique cars in here. As I said, they change the exhibits 2, 3, 4 times a year. These were very, very common as growing up as a boy, and gas stations, all gas stations had these oil tanks, oil reserves. You buy a quart of oil, dump in your car, and they pumped it out in a can. We'll see what happens when we squeeze this squeeze ball. Of course, there's a small display of tractors. There's only 2 tractors in here today. And this is a thrashing machine. And you could thrash oats or wheat, barley. This is steam-fired, or wood-fired, or coal-fired. Generates steam, turns that flywheel, and the flywheel turned various parts of farm implements. Could be corn grinders, it could be thrashing machines like we're looking at. Here's an early tractor. Really a unique type of thing. It's got rubber front wheels. I'm not sure it isn't converted. It may be a Model T that's converted into a tractor with steel wheels added. They have lugs on it to give you traction. But I can see bouncing around a rough field all day riding on that seat would not be comfortable. Here we have a plow pulled by a horse. The operator or the farmer would walk behind hanging onto these handles to guide it with the reins of the horse around his neck. Here we have a horse-drawn sickle bar, Of course, the operator would sit on this with the hand levers and foot levers, and the sickle bar was powered by the wheels going around and cut hay, cut the grain. People would come along behind and shock it, getting ready for thrashing. Again, this is Main Street, and this is directly ahead of the front door as you walk in, and it represents Main Street, downtown Lynden. It's two-story. These upper second-story office buildings all contain dentist's office and stuff like that, replicas. But during the open house last night, the photography studio and the dentist office had people representing the dentist and that type of thing. It's just a marvelous museum. Of course, this is the drugstore, and last night there was a druggist in here behind the prescription counter. Haberdasher shop, ladies' hats, jewelry. This is all on the main floor. Next door we have a clock shop or a jewelry shop. And of course, what town would not be complete without a barber shop? With a collection of straight razors. Across the way is a Lynden City Hall and Lynden Valley Fire Department. Here we have a saloon. Last night they had bartenders serving apple cider. Very unique. Great chandelier, wagon wheel. I've seen these in a lot of Western movies. One-armed bandit, slot machine. Memory Lane School. Replica of a small classroom, teacher's desk, and a few students' desks. You have to go back a few years, and I certainly remember the inkwell. Typical schools in the frontier had an outdoor pitcher pump, and this is a pitcher pump. Here we are back at the sporting goods store and looking at various displays of older weapons and ammunition boxes, cigar boxes, fishing rods, typical of the day. And this stuff used to be displayed right out on Main Street. Here we have a picture of the outhouse, which was typical of even cities in the old days. There was no indoor plumbing. Everybody had an outhouse.
Up in Alaska someplace, sitting under a tree, and it had been used originally in Yellowstone Park, and then later on it got moved to Mount McKinley National Park and used there for several years until motorized vehicles came about. So it kind of got, like I say, kind of shoved under a tree and forgotten about. The box was really rotten. The only thing that was restored was the wheels. He had redone the wheels, had those redone, and so anyway, I bought the parts and pieces and basically took it home, and with a lot of help from my dad-in-law, who's a carpenter, we come up with a pieces of wood and replaced the whole main frame. The actual the leathers down there yet were okay. We salvaged those. And
now, when you say the leathers, you're talking about the springs.
yeah, the leather has got to be a name for that, but I can't think of it right offhand. Leather belting yeah, that's what it rocks on. That's, yeah, equivalent to the spring.
Well, it's a wonderful display, Bob. That's what makes museums work.
Yeah.
Donation. If people don't donate, why, museums will go away. And it is October 11th, and I'm on my way back to Everett from Lynden, where I enjoyed the Lynden Museum. Really a beautiful drive. Not a fast road, but a good road. See the hillsides. Lots of farmland, lots of dairy cattle.